lesson. So there are two major instructional styles in teaching second language grammar. So one is the one that I'll discuss to you, which is the explicit instruction in a grammar lesson. So speaking of grammar, it is a category of language that mainly involves morphology or word parts and syntax or sentence structure. So therefore, it is an important aspect and there are few different ways in including it in our instruction. So going back in a explicit instruction, it has something to do with in a formal instruction. The idea is to have students consciously focus on and learn grammatical forms as well as their purpose in a sentence. So, explicit instruction is a method of teaching that is both direct and systematic. So, lessons are clearly clear when teachers provide precise instruction. They demonstrate how to begin and complete an activity. They also provide plenty of opportunities for youngsters to practice and receive feedback. So, let's consider a moment when you attempt to follow a new recipe only to discover that one or more steps were missing or confusing. So, you might have figured out what to do next or might added the wrong recipe or else stop cooking the meal altogether if you didn't have explicit instructions, right? So when a children learn something new, the same thing can happen. So some people can make inferences to figure out what to do next or to get through or a difficult situation. However, for children who learn and think in various ways, a single ambiguous directive or too many things to remember can be a deal breaker. So this is when clear guidance comes into play. It is appropriate for pupils of all ages. It can be taught to an entire class, a small group of pupils, or a single students. So how a teacher or an educator use this explicit instruction? So here are a sequence of steps in explicit instructions. So first is to identify clear specific objective, break the information into chunks, model with clear explanation, verbalize the thinking process, provide opportunities to practice, and the last one is to give feedback. So that is how an educator use these explicit instructions. So why is it important or why is it an educator use these explicit instructions? So here are some reasons to use explicit instructions. So first, students get opportunities to practice. Explicit instruction helps students who need intensive interaction, including those with learning and disabilities. It can give them opportunities to practice. It also gives as teacher or an educator a structure to make some those learners are capable to make sure those learners are capable and successful as they practice. Next is it uses data collection and analysis. Each time students practice a skill, we have a chance to collect data that can be used to plan the next lesson, like reteaching or moving on to the next progression of the skill. This data definitely helps meet the needs of each student. So the last reason to use these explicit instructions is it enlightens cognitive load. So students who learn and think differently often have troubles with working memory. That makes it hard to make sense of a long series of directions. So therefore, these explicit instructions breaks up learning into smaller parts. This lightens the cognitive load or how much resources a student needs to process information. A lighter cognitive load frees up working memory. So that's how important it is because learning new skills requires a lot of working memory. Explicit instruction involves activities like worksheets, repetition, or fill in the blanks activities where students have to properly conjugate the verb. So the idea here is to have students consciously focus on and learn grammatical forms and position in a sentence. So as what I've said earlier, this explicit instruction is a great way to teach grammatical forms, but it comes with a certain drawbacks. It does not, for example, require any communication practice. Students aren't learning new to apply the grammatical forms in a practical or conversational sense outside of the classroom. So, as a result, pupils have a harder time remembering or recognizing these language features in a more communicative situation, and their fluency diminishes as a result. According to Fletcher, Lin, Fax, and Bernice 2019, explicit instruction is a set of instructional actions that improves the chances of student success. Consider it as a way to improve students' results while also enhancing your profession. Increase modeling, regular opportunities for pupils to respond, and both guided and autonomous practice are all among the instructional behaviors well examined. So when teachers tell students what they need to do through straightforward explanations and sharing and also modeling new knowledge, they are providing explicit instruction. So exactly. So here are some elements of explicit instructions. So, first is the focus instruction on critical content. So, by the way, these elements are both accessible to teachers and has impact on student learning. So, we'll now look at each elements and their characteristics one by one. So, the first one is focus instruction and critical content. So match the students' instructional requirements by teaching skills, tactics, vocabulary terms, concepts, and norms that will empower them in the future. So for example, if you're teaching a unit about plants, you wouldn't focus the content on the different type of plants. You would focus on the critical features of plants and how they keep a plants alive. So the knowledge here of the parts of the plants and how a plant stays alive are more critical for students' future success than the different types of plants. So that's it. Let's proceed to the next element. So next element is the sequence skills logically. So consider a variety of curricular variables such as teaching easier skills before harder skills, high frequency skills before low frequency skills, ensuring mastery of prerequisite to a skill before teaching the skill itself, and separating skills and strategies that are similar and thus may be confusing to students. So, for example, you wouldn't teach your students how to do double addition with regrouping before teaching them the simple addition. So, ensuring that the students have mastery of the prerequisites skills of addition with regrouping. So, next is break down complex skills and strategies. So, teach in modest increments. Concerns about cognitive overload, proper processing demands and addressed by segmenting difficult abilities into smaller instructional units of new contents units are synthesized once they have mastered. So, for example, if you're teaching a new science unit on light and sound, it's about light and sound. So, you wouldn't teach all of the content and skills in one day, of course. So, you would break apart rather the content into smaller units, teach them individually, and then once on the smaller units are taught, you would review the entire unit with all the contents together for them to be able to understand the topic easily. So, next is the fourth one, design, organize, and focus lessons. So make sure lessons are organized and focused. In order to make optimal use of instructional time, organized lessons are on topic, well sequenced, and contain no irrelevant digressions. So for example, when you create a lesson plan, you have the content you are going to teach, the order in with to teach and any modeling opportunities for student to respond and a place for order in which you will teach the content. So doing this means that your lesson is designed around teaching critical content and focus on how and when you will teach the skill. So that's how it talks about the designed, organized, and focused lessons. So next is the fifth one, begin lessons with a clear statement of the lesson's goals and your expectations. So tell exactly what they need to know and why it's vital. Students will perform better if they are aware of the desired educational goals and outcomes, as well as how the material or skills offered with benefit will benefit them. Sorry for the typo. So, for example, when you begin a lesson, you wouldn't just start the lesson without telling students what they will be learning and why they should learn. So, you also wouldn't just begin a lesson without telling the students the expectations you have for the lesson. So, you would explain to them the skills they will be learning and the reason why they are learning and what you expect for the lesson you are about to teach. So, that's the only thing you will tell them. So it talks about these begin lessons with clear statement of the lessons goals and our expectations of the students. So the sixth one is review prior skills and acknowledge before beginning instructions. So provide a summary of pertinent facts. Check to see if pupils have necessary abilities and acknowledge to master the skill being taught in class. So, for example, when you begin your lesson on 2 by 2 multiplication, you wouldn't first you would first ensure that the students have the relevant multiplication skills, of course. So, if students do not have the prerequisite skills, then a review lesson may need to be done first. So, the by doing so, demonstrate to students that basic multiplication skills connect with lighter order multiplication skills like 2 by 2 digit multiplication. So that's it. Review prior skills and acknowledge before beginning instructions. So next is provide step by step instructions. So model the skill, and clarify the decision making process needed to complete a task or procedure by thinking aloud as you perform the skill or strategy in order to show the students a model of proficient performance. So, for example, this portion of the lesson is the I do, we do, and you do. So, teacher starts basically by providing extensive modeling of the new skill or content, the I do. So, practice with students with frequent opportunities to respond built in. So, the we do. And last is finally the students practice both guided and independently. So that's it. That's the you do. So provide step-by-step instructions. Next is use clear and concise language. So use consistent and ambiguous wording and terminology. The complexity of your speech should depend on students' receptive vocabulary to reduce possible confusion. So for them to easily understand, right? So the example is using concise language for the words is part of teaching the content. So when you are teaching a lesson about weather, you wouldn't just refer to clouds as clouds, right? So you would refer them as cumulus or status. So they are called clouds by different names. So exactly for them to differentiate um, the different names of the clouds. Next is to provide adequate range of examples and non-examples. So in order to establish the boundaries of when not to apply a skill, strategy, concept, or rule, provide a wide range of examples and non-examples. So when teaching students about nouns, creating examples and non-examples will help students differentiate nouns from other parts of the speech. So providing students with examples help them to differentiate between the critical features and attributes of content and skills for each type of noun. So it is important to provide adequate range of examples and non-examples. So next is provide guided and supported practice. So in order to promote initial success and build confidence, regulate the differently of practice opportunities during the lesson and practice students' guidance and skill performance. So when student demonstrate success, you can gradually increase task difficulty as you decrease the level of guidance. So, for example, if you are teaching students how to do one digit subtraction without regrouping, you would give your students 100 problems to practice by themselves. So, instead, you would provide students with five simple examples to do together with you, then five problems for them to practice with a partner, and then five independent problems. So that's the some elements of explicit instruction and their characteristics one by one. So to sum up all of this, explicit instruction is a purposeful way of overly teaching students. So it means a clear cut and right way of teaching that includes both instructional and delivery procedures. So it is a systematic method of teaching with emphasis on proceeding in small steps, checking for understanding, and achieving active and successful participation by all students. So that's all about my report of the explicit instruction in a grammar lesson. So thank you for listening. Hope you learned something from me. Thank you and God bless. So before that, here are the references of my topic.